Okay, so with Bob Iger out and Bob Chapek in as CEO of Disney, the question then becomes what's going to happen to Kathleen Kennedy? And we're going to talk about that right now. Hey everyone, how's it going? Matt Jarbo here, $3 Theater. So today's been a big and interesting day. Bob Iger has left his position of CEO of the Walt Disney Company, but he hasn't quit. He is more or less ascended to the throne of the executive chair of the board of directors, basically meaning that he's overseeing everything. His fingers are going to be in everything, but Bob Chapek is going to be transitioning into the position over the span of, and I'm not kidding you here, the next 22 months, because that is when Iger's contract truly expires, December 31st, 2021. And it does actually raise the question, will Kathleen Kennedy still be around before the end of her contract extension, which also expires apparently on the same day, December 31st, 2021. So it's about 22 months away on both counts. And many people have been asking that question. Is Kathy going to get the boot? And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to discuss it because I don't think it's going to be the answer that people want, and I'm going to explain why. So again, Chapek in charge now, this guy coming off of the parks department, you know, he was running the parks, and that is going to really be where the primary focus of Disney is going. They want to move and transition into China. Now, a big part of that is actually Star Wars in regards to trying to get access to the Middle Kingdom for fans of the movies and fans of the book. I don't think they're going to invest $1 billion into a Galaxy's Edge land at Disney Shanghai, because that doesn't make any financial sense right now, and it would just be a massive waste of cash. But we have to take into account the popularity of Galaxy's Edge right now. So over the course of the summer, we were being told reports that it was just kind of lackluster. It was underperforming, and one of the reasons why was they only had the one ride and everything else was practically a mall. But now that Rise of the Resistance came out, and not only Florida, but a month ago in Disneyland, the ride is still insanely popular, and it's very difficult for some people to get boarding groups to even go on and see this thing happen. And they run through, I think, 36 people at once. So it's a constant shuffle of 36 people, and it takes them hours to get in. Clearly, the ride is doing well, and the popularity of Galaxy's Edge, all things considered, has never been higher, although that may not really be saying much. You can look at Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, try to call it a failure because it failed to produce more money or gross more money than The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens, in which case, yeah, that's a valid criticism, but at the same time, it still cleared $1 billion, which is not bad for Disney as a whole. And last night, we happened to see the first announcement of the High Republic and getting a bit of insight into just what that is and how they're going to then be trying to play out those storylines in book and comics form for the next couple years, to tell a massive story in that world. And the obvious answer to that one is clearly going to be movies and television. I just think that's just where it all goes. It has to. But the biggest thing to consider here, especially when you look at Disney in regards to being a business, is the popularity of The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, especially with Baby Yoda merch finally going on sale, finally going to be getting out there. You can go to Build-A-Bear and get your own Baby Yoda Build-A-Bear. I plan on it, because I'm a grown man who wants a Baby Yoda Build-A-Bear. Not for my children, for me. You can do that, right? And then you can also buy the Funko Pops and all those other things, and a lot of it, the merch is doing well. And the hype for season 2 of The Mandalorian is high. Are there issues with Lucasfilm right now in regards to, say, Obi-Wan and Cassian Andor in terms of screenwriting? Yes, there are clearly, apparently, problems. That's what we've been getting told. But the pre-production problems, not as big of an issue as the post-production problems, which is a lot of what happened with The Rise of Skywalker, right? Both pre and post, especially if you look at the failures of the narrative structure of The Last Jedi. So all of that being said, never mind Clone Wars Season 7 just starting, really popular. Disney just wrapped up Star Wars Resistance Season 2. Again, that was, I think, popular in its own right with its particular fan base or who it was aimed at. You can now watch the whole series on Disney Plus. I believe it just started streaming yesterday or today, so you can go check that one out. But when you look at Kathy as a whole, it looks like she's pretty secure. there's no reason right now to shake anything up in that department, because that department is currently full steam ahead on ancillary. When I say ancillary, I'm referring to non-theatrical releases and content as a way to rebuilding and reestablishing the Star Wars brand. Now, another thing too that they could potentially fire her for, and I'm thinking that this could be a thing, would be her salary. Now, I don't know how much she makes exactly, but according to one website I found, they estimate that she makes somewhere in the neighborhood of about $25 million a year, which is a lot of money. And you have to ask yourself, does she deserve that kind of cash? Now, Bob Chapek is notorious at cutting costs, right? He's very, very, very much a spendthrift in regards to trying to slash budgets. And that could be something that makes its way to Lucasfilm, because you could argue that in some aspects, the full-on division is somewhat underperforming right now, especially after Solo and The Rise of Skywalker failed to do as well as I think a lot of people thought they would do, myself included. But I still don't think they're going to fire her, because right now they're trying to build unity with the brand. And that kind of executive leadership shakeup is probably going to hurt them overall than not. Now, you got to remember, when this news came today, the stock for Disney dropped about 3.62%, which I don't know how much that was in regards to millions, but that's a lot of freaking money. And there's a lot of people out there that might sit there and lose some of that stock value if they get rid of Kennedy. One of those people actually happens to be George Lucas, which at least back in 2012, I don't know where it stands right now specifically, but back in 2012, the single largest individual shareholder for Disney stock was George Lucas after the purchase of Lucasfilm. But looking at the deal that Bob Iger made for 20th Century Fox, I would argue right now that Rupert Murdoch and that company probably have a larger say, and they probably don't want to get involved in this kind of internal conflict. But I do think that George Lucas would probably stand up and defend Kathleen Kennedy from being excommunicated from the company. What I do think is going to happen is I do think she will resign. I just can't tell you when. I do think it's going to happen before December 31st, 2021. I do. I think it's going to happen before. I think she's going to pick a successor, and she's going to run it past the board and get that approved, and then she's going to resign gracefully. Because at the end of the day, she's going to want to save face, right? Her public image may be tarnished in some sections of YouTube, but generally speaking, the vast majority of Star Wars fans are pretty happy with where a lot of it is. And they don't know about the drama maybe surrounding her or not. And even though there's lots of YouTubers who talk about it, I've talked about it multiple times. There's, accounted for billions of views, most likely. That still doesn't generally seem to translate to the larger group out there, the casuals and the normies, right? There's a lot of people are just not aware of it. I mean, I talked to a friend of mine who was like, oh yeah, no, I heard Solo was a sucky movie. And I'm all like, okay, but have you heard anything else? And he goes like, nah, I just heard Solo was sucky, right? So it's very specific where the Star Wars hatred goes, unless you are following an outlet that particularly tends to focus on one negative aspect or another, and they really shine a light on a couple things. So my personal take is that no, she will not be fired. She will be allowed to resign gracefully. Will it happen before 2021? Probably not. And I say that because of everything they've got going on right now. Star Wars has so many irons in the fire. Trying to run a transition right now would be very difficult, because she'd have to spend a lot of time getting the successor up to speed unless they promote from within the company. And the only other person I could think of would be like Michelle Rejwan, who is the senior VP of live action development right now. And she was a J.J. Abrams holdover from Bad Robot. So that would be maybe the only other person that might come in. I know people out there are going to sit there and say, but Matt, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and to which case, I know. Look, those dudes are creatives. Let them create, right? Let those guys create. That's what they do. They are good at that, and they have produced arguably my favorite show of 2019, The Mandalorian. I just absolutely adore that. And yeah, hey, guess what? Kathy also had a hand in that one too, so we have to give her a bit of credit on that one there. Just saying. But while there might be a leadership shakeup in other departments and other divisions, I don't think Lucasfilm is going to be impacted. I just don't. I don't see it happening. There's really no reason for it. Now, there will be some people out there that argue they should get rid of her as a sign of good faith. New leadership can't protect her. Boot her out. Get raw. But that's not really how business is done. That's not how business is done. Someone like Kathleen Kennedy, if she was on a podcast and dropped like the N-word or something, that would be a little bit different of a scenario. There would be a very valid public reason to get rid of her. But in the meantime, if just some people on the internet don't like her, that's not a valid reason. And I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's just the way that it is. So right now, what essentially is going to happen is most likely she will be probably already prepping her resignation letter today, I would assume. I would assume it's already ready to go. And it all depends. If Chapek comes in and starts trying to slash budgets, because remember, Iger approved $100 million for the season of The Mandalorian, right? These large-scale budgets for these shows. And that could start getting slashed under Bob Chapek, who is renowned for cutting costs on certain things while cranking up prices at theme parks. The biggest battle on Disney's hand right now is going to be the diehard Disney theme park users, attendees, the guests that are absolutely livid with Chapek taking over. They're the ones to watch out for, because those are going to be the ones who are going to make a vocal stink. And as long as they're making a vocal stink, and believe me, their money is valued at a lot higher rate than the people who complain about Kathleen Kennedy on the internet. You know what I mean? They're the ones who they're going to be spending more time trying to cut off at the pass, or perhaps coddle, or perhaps whatever else they're going to do. Their attention is going to be there, and it won't be on Lucasfilm. Now, if I am 100% wrong and they get rid of her, I'll fully admit I was 100% wrong. I have no problem with that, but I just don't see it happening. Nothing about it makes any sense to me. And I try to look at things from the most amount of business sense that I possibly can, look at all the variables, what's going on, and not just give in to my own personal feelings or my own personal speculation. I'll talk about those things, obviously, but just everything happening with Star Wars right now shows that it's actually in a reparative state, and you don't get rid of the head of that when things are now looking like they're on the upward swing. Just saying. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. I mean, clearly also Star Wars Celebration is happening later on this year. So that's something Kathy is personally involved in as well. She's got her hands full. They're not going to want to sit there during this time while they're trying to figure out the next steps for the movies themselves and kneecap her. They're just not going to. It's just going to cause too much of a rift, and that could further tank stock prices. It's a better business decision to keep her where she is until they get the next stage established. And once that's in play and all the cogs are oiled and the machine is working, then she could gracefully exit. Very similar to how Bob Iger gracefully exited today by saying, well, hey, basically it's a good time to do it because everything is kind of where I want it to be, and there's no real need for me to stick around. Right? That's kind of how I think it's going to be. But anyway, I do look forward to your thoughts. I look forward to your opinions. And I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. Let me know down in the comments below. I will talk to you guys all later. Have yourself a fantastic day. Thank you for watching. And please be sure to hit that like and that subscribe and smack that bell and leave a comment, good, bad, or the other. I want to hear it. I'll see you guys later. Have a good one and peace out.